All right, boys, the Diablo IV campfire chat is about to start. Now, what I'm going to do is go through, pick out the necessary parts, remove the filler, and give you guys a decent breakdown of what's going on. So if you don't have time to watch the full thing and you just want the meat and potatoes, I'm going to give it to you. Yeah.
So you're not going to get the critical strike damage change where the actual item after.
So you have to actually
but you are going
play it for a couple hours and get the drop again to get the new effects.
On the right, when you find your new items,
that makes sense, I guess.
You're going to get the new affixes, the new rules and things on the item.
So new versions of these items will have all of the buffs we're talking about.
New versions will have everything new, and the old versions will get the new stuff on the actual legendary effects, but then you won't have the new item stats on it.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, so going back to kind of other things that we're looking at. So that's the Sorcerer and the Barbarian one we're focusing on. Then generally across all classes, we're doing a few other things as well.
Oh, here we go.
We're looking at builds that aren't really hitting a high enough power level, and we're going to be just buffing them and increasing the power of them, so they should feel better and be more competitive. We're also going to be looking at increasing the attractiveness of kind of uniques across the board. We're focusing on Sorcerer and Barbarian for this patch, but we actually believe that we can do this kind of thing across the board. There's a lot of uniques that we think aren't really hitting the mark.
Yeah, a lot of uniques are pretty garbage.
Tough thing that we talk about
Nobody really uses them.
Because, you know,
So it's good, I like that.
Yeah, totally. So that's
okay, so he's tested it. Maybe.
Okay, so
I don't believe they test anything, but, you know.
Last week about
chain lightning, greater chain lightning.
We want to do,
okay.
like going forward in the game, other things we want to do.
Ultimates are kind of in this range.
Give us more Paragon points.
Goal. But similarly, you know, a lot of ultimates are really strong in the early and mid game. You take it, it blows up the screen, feels great, and then in the late game, a lot of ultimates that we see that are used are just used because they buff the player in some way.
Yeah, they don't blow up the screen the same way anymore.
Yeah, right. I want you to be excited to use Bone Storm because Bone Storm
especially
is awesome
when
because it gives you a buff.
A lot of the ultimates are 40 to 60 second cooldown, man.
About, in the mid to long term.
Like the only reason I used Death Trap with Rogue at the end game was to just pull them in so I could blast them and
sort of
stack them up.
Here. We're about to get into patch notes. We're about to talk
and
about
to reset my other cooldowns. Well, they said they want to do it like a week early.
We do want to jump straight.
So it's going to be probably 2 weeks before we get this patch.
We do want to start off with the Sorcerer. So we have a lot of different slides and changes.
Green Firebolt is one we're changing Firebolt to basically just generate mana.
I'm not familiar with the Sorcerer, but we'll let them talk.
So when you would just try and cast Firebolt, you know, without doing anything else, you would just always miss. These are all the key passives at the bottom of the skill tree. Isu's Ferocity is a big one. You're going to see a lot of these kinds of changes where it used to work kind of in a more narrow use case, and now it works.
I don't know if these are any good.
Uptime and usefulness.
I don't know. I haven't played Sorcerer. You guys let me know. Paragon.
Next for Paragon, we're going to talk. Let's see. These are a lot of the defensive changes that we talked about. So you've got some damage reduction increases to a lot of the glyphs and
I mean, these aren't horrible. These seem pretty good.
This one is when you.
It should definitely make a difference.
The next one. All right, so here we've got some more Paragon nodes. Again, damage reduction across the board. Keep in mind that also on some of the rare nodes, you can see them twice in a board rather than only once for the glyphs. So that means that this is actually like doubled if you go for both of them. Skill and healthy enemies.
So they buffed that a good amount.
And Fireball, and you get half of the bonus all the time, and then an extra bonus against healthy enemies. So now you can use this in builds that you weren't able to at all before. The next one is pretty good, is Gravitational Aspect. This one was Swing in Power.
Not bad, not bad.
Next, we've got Recharging Aspect. This one was kind of similar to the change that we did to Chain Lightning to that bonus baseline. It used to only give you mana when it bounced off of you. Now it's going to give you mana when it bounces off of fun.
Guess I'm about to be a Chain Lightning Sorcerer next season.
Towards Aspect. This one makes your Veers map. And let me see here. Some... Snow Veiled Aspect is getting a pretty big generic buff.
They're literally buffing every aspect for the Sorcerer. Holy shit. Sorcerers are going to be happy as shit, man.
Bonus armor when you use it as well, just generally more useful. Incendiary Aspect terrifies me, but we're doing it. This one used to be that it procced off of all of your burning damage. So your burning damage could give you mana, and now it's going to just do it off of your pyromancy skills damage. So this opens up Meteor, Fireball, all of those other skills that aren't really Firewall. For that one, and then for uniques, we've got the Gloves of the Illuminator. This is the one where your fireballs bounce and deal AoE damage. Before, when you got this, it was kind of in a very weird place where the bounces could do it pretty often in such a way where you'd only hit an enemy once with a bounce, and we have to put this damage penalty on it because of Barbarian.
So,
here
we go.
Like I said before, we're increasing.
Again, haven't played that class, don't know.
Basic skills. So you're just going to get more Fury in the early game so that you can, do that basic core skill loop a little more often, so it should be more fun. Double swings gain a damage buff, ruptures gain a damage buff, charges gain a damage buff. And,
45 to 70% on rupture.
Duration, so this one gives you berserking, and it used to be that you had to damage 2 or more enemies or 3 or more enemies to get a better buff, and now we're adding bosses to that. So when you're in a boss fight, you're just going to be able to get and chain that berserking again, making it usable in a part of the game where it didn't used to be. We've also got Gushing Wounds is one I think worth. Let me see. One of them, the aspect of Unrelenting Fury here, is one worth calling out, where again you're going to get a benefit when hitting bosses, and actually useful in a part of the game that it wasn't used in at all. Another one is the aspect of, or 2 earthquake aspects there at the bottom. When you rupture enemies.
I mean, removing cooldown reduction for crit strike, I feel like
enemies take standing
ever since they nerfed the cooldowns, like we need cooldown reduction
with
unless they're gonna revert it back.
Combine that with
I don't know, man.
Key passive where the bleed damage,
70, right?
where that scales better. That'll just be quite a bit more damage across the board. Hellhammer we talked about. Ramlandi's Magnum Opus, we're replacing the physical damage affix with vulnerable damage.
I was just going to say, we said
something I know.
We were going to buff.
You see them because you usually want.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
But because it happens on the second wave, the first wave comes, does a little damage to everything.
They all move.
And then they all move, and then everything falls apart, right? So this just makes it more reliable.
It sets itself up.
It sets itself up.
So it's not going to knock down on the second now, just the first, which is fine.
Noteworthy, there's some buffs to things that are underused.
Siphoning strikes, 75 to 85. I mean, they should put it back to non-lucky hit, but
generically usable.
It's something.
And then for uniques, kind of similar to Barbarian, we found some room here to make a couple stats replaced with things that we know are really, really attractive. So in Wind Force, we replaced the all stats.
I went through that so quick, I didn't even see the last 2.
And then the Word of Hakan, we replaced ultimate damage with cooldown reduction. So Druid, kind of similar to what I said about the Barbarian, about that early game kind of feeling a little bit slow. We're also
I use Storm Strike, gonna gain 1.
Of the Druid's basic skills. So across the board, you're just going to be able to get to those core skill casts.
Increasing wolf damage.
We're also improving the passive damage generally of a lot of their companion skills. So your wolves are going to feel better. The both passive and active damage is going up. The upgrades for the wolves are all going to be a little bit more powerful.
God, they're going through this quick.
Ravens, their passive damage is going up, and then brutal ravens. This is the one that gives you another little, a couple more little ravens to go peck your enemies to death. They're also going to peck a little bit harder, so a little bit more fantasy fulfilling there, I think. And then we're also looking at rabies. We've got quite a few things going on. Bone Spirit. This is the enhanced Bone Spirit, which is where when you crit enemies with the Bone Spirit, you get cooldown reduction. We're increasing that from 6 to 7 seconds, so it should be a little more friendly to players in this current state of the game. The Wither under tunes.
From 20 to 30 to 90 to 170. Jeez.
This one, I'm hoping gets to see more play. This used to be a resource legendary, which looking at it now was a little weird because it doesn't actually give you resource. It's just cooldown reduction on the golem skill. So we're going to move that to a utility. So now you can put this like on your boots and other places that you didn't have to, and it doesn't have to take
Necromancer.
Monsters. What we got here?
They may want mobility a little bit. I heard
usually the slower individuals in the group. So
yeah. Helping them out a little bit. Here, this is a monster change, but it impacts minions really, so Necromancer and Druid. But these attacks now from the Balrog and some elite affixes are going to be dealing reduced damage to Necromancer minions.
I don't really use minions. I don't think a lot of people use minions, but
And then now we got some of our generic updates. We only have a couple of them. The first one is to a Malignant Heart. This is the Caged Heart of Spellbreaking. And this one used to say that when you took elemental damage, you gained damage resistance to that element, right? It was thematic to reducing only that element. But we found that was really, really narrow. Again, trying to open things up so
I don't think I've used that
not so narrowly useful that you're not.
I don't think I've seen it for my class.
So now it's just going to be crazy. Going to be
I haven't seen that.
Really good.
I saw it on my rogue. I haven't seen it on the Druid.
The stats on it that it just wasn't hitting the attractiveness that we wanted. So even though this terrifies me, we're going to bump it up and see how it goes. But we're going to replace the all stats affix with bonus max life. The barrier is now also going to be scaling with your maximum life.
Especially
I mean, it was a good amount of stuff.
And Sorcerer.
I thought it was just going to be Sorcerer and Barbarian, but
to that we got some stuff in for the
It's
rogue
better than nothing,
Necromancer
boys, you know? At
players
least they're
as
doing
well,
something. I know they just
making sure
nerfed
that
us big time, but...
buffed up some of the more undersea stuff that we had seen.
Actually, one more caveat to all of that. I should have said this at the beginning. It's not final yet.
Not final
This
yet.
is
That's why
planned.
you probably saw the little
The
water
odds are
going
very high. We do 90% of it or most of it, maybe even all. But as we get into the weeds of things and we're updating things, you know, some things may change. So this is our plan. It's very likely it'll be at least most of it, if not all of it. But it's not completely in the game yet, so...
There might be some number tweaks, basically.
Yeah, we always add a small caveat just because things are still going through
So they could still
testing
change
right
it.
now
They're
on
like,
our
here's
side.
what we're going to do.
Testing, all that stuff.
Yeah,
so.
Just kidding. You get half
I'm
of
very
it.
careful. I always caveat, not final until you see it in the game.
Adam's
but-
being very cautious about
Yes.
it.
I am very
It's
cautious
not
of
going to
it.
be...
So we're gonna have to
you're not
double
gonna
check the patch
experience
notes.
something that's totally different from what...
And it's always a conversation.
It's also interesting to see that the feedback, particularly on Druid companions, like we knew that they were really cool, but like the number of Druid players who are looking for more ways to kind of make more companion-focused builds is maybe a little bit higher than we expected.
Yes.
So this is one of those situations where, like, kind of in response to the fact that players are really hoping, like, Druid players are looking to go after this fantasy of, like, I am the master of the animal kingdom, and I'm going to have all these.
Yeah, it
these-
would be
and
cool to
nature,
do
right?
that.
I'm gonna have all
Have
these,
more
these
options
buddies
or
with me. I think
make them
it's
stronger
kinda
so
like
you
moving
can
our
use
handle,
them.
and it's like, oh yeah, actually, there is something really cool here. There is fantasy here for us to really latch onto and more that we can do. But
I
to
want
Adam's
an
point,
army
it's
of
still very important we make sure that the Necromancer feels distinct. and the Druid feels
ostriches
distinct after these changes.
Pecking.
Correct. It's the eternal storm.
Just necking out there, you know?
We also have a lot of like quality of life items that we wanted to talk about.
Oh,
we actually kinda hit on
QOL.
last week
sure.
when we were talking on the
Listening.
campfire chat that would be coming in 1.1.1. And I know we wanted to talk a little bit more about those here. I know we have some changes coming for like monster density, for instance.
Yeah, I want to talk about monster density.
Yeah, please. Let's talk
so
about it. Oh,
That,
yes,
so
the
this is how it is today.
Yeah.
okay.
If you go into Nostravus Deepwood, of course, monsters are going to not be exactly like this, but this is an example of it. And then in 1.1.1, it's going to change, so you can see a lot more monsters here.
There it is.
And this is really going back to, we talked about our mission statement for the live game of after you've achieved your build, being able to go in and mow down
Better
large
than
numbers of
nothing.
enemies, deal with large numbers of enemies. That's sort of a core part.
Especially
of
now
an
with that
RPG.
cage heart where
We
you
wanna make
suck 'em
sure
in,
that
just
we're
blast
delivering,
'em all, man,
especially
get some-
in-game content.
and you'll get more
that's how to
XP
look for Nightmare Dungeons. On
for the
Helltide,
dungeons as
we've
well,
been
doing that, having more
doing the
enemies.
Same thing increases. So
I mean,
it needs
they
to
should
stay
take the mystery
performing
chest
at the
back to
same time, so we've been working
175.
on that
I
at
mean,
the
if the
same
monster
time,
density
so that we
increases
can
and they
really
drop
hit,
more cinders, I guess the 250 won't be
hit that,
horrible.
Target. And this is something too.
But
that,
like, I used to roll through and
when
get 3-4
comes
chests. Now, like, I get one. That's it.
1.1.1.
We gotta have like
This last week, we have gotten a lot of
Bosses.
feedback
All right.
before about the about players, particularly like in World Tiers 3 and 4, fighting like dungeon bosses and world bosses, and being able to go in there with their enhanced power. Now they've got like some uniques online. Their build has really come online, and they've got like a lot of like damage to vulnerable targets. Like they're mowing through some of these bosses faster than we expect.
These Nightmare Dungeon bosses are like 1 or 2 hits, they're
It's
done.
not really challenging and not really engaging. So we are boosting the health of bosses in World Tiers 3 and 4.
okay.
At brackets as
How
you're
much,
kind of going
though?
through the experience. But in exchange for this, in exchange for making some of these pieces just a little bit harder as players are going through them, we are also going to be making a change to the rewards that you get going through these.
Yeah.
So now, like after 1.1.1 goes live, dungeon bosses starting at level 35 even. So this is before you can get into World Tiers 3 and 4. And then it's the so once you've done that, or once you've killed those, you're going to have a guaranteed legendary item drop in that space. And that's going to carry up as well into World Tiers 3 and 4. When you complete a Legion event, that's going to also give you a guaranteed legendary drop starting at level 35. There's a chance before 35, but it's guaranteed at level 35.
A guarantee is good, but I usually always get legendaries from those already.
Butcher has a 100% chance to drop a legendary as well, because he's a boss, of course. And then another really big one is we got, and this is funny. I did it. Please don't follow me on Twitter unless you really want to see a lot of nerdy stuff. But I did a Twitter poll a while ago where I basically just said what do you think is the chance at which a treasure goblin will drop a legendary item? I said 10%, 25%, 40%, 50% with the 4 options. The majority of players,
probably said 10.
voters, I should say, right, all selected 10% was the chance.
Yeah, because they don't drop shit.
Their own, their feelings
suck.
on it as they were kind of going through it. But the reality
Bring back
is, and I
portals.
said level 50
Treasure
goblin was
rooms.
part of this. But the reality is they have a 50% chance to drop
No
legendary items
way.
today. And
There's
that's
no
like going
way
back
it's
to, like,
50.
level 35. You've got a very, very high chance to drop legendary items, but
So what you're saying is sometimes I kill a treasure goblin and it doesn't drop a legendary item.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
that's what I heard.
That's exactly right. So basically, if you flip a quarter every 25 minutes, that's basically your chance to get a legendary item when you're fighting treasure goblins in the overworld. And it's very easy to have like tails, 5 times in a row, and then
That's what happens to me every time.
And as humans, we are 7 times more likely to remember a negative thing than a positive thing. So this is nothing wrong with rather there's nothing wrong with the player's perception of treasure goblins not.
I mean, treasure goblins are so rare as it is. Like, they should always drop a legendary.
And when you don't get a legendary item from something called a treasure goblin, that can feel bad. So what
Yeah,
we
it's
decided
bad.
to do is we've gone back
Hurts
and
my
said, starting
feelings.
right at level 15 for treasure goblins.
Okay.
15, they have a guaranteed legendary item drop chance when you kill one from that point forward. So now when you see treasure goblins on the map, you start hearing them snortling around in the corners of your, your screen.
I'll definitely kill them now instead of skipping them.
You need to take it out. You need to get a legendary item from it. That
right.
happens very,
All
very
right.
early.
Okay.
So we think that's going to be
All right.
like a really fun update to kind of help get these things
But
across. 50%
they're gonna
isn't useful
drop
in
the
this
rate
case.
that they
100%
spawn,
actually
probably.
want you to feel like you're getting that power.
Large.
And Moez
plus-
for
This
you wants to
giant
take your
treasure
money.
goblin
There he is.
That
Oh my God.
absolutely doesn't fit on camera
Look
at
how
all.
happy he is.
And
that
now
he
he's off
got
camera.
his
Yeah,
legendary.
now.
Staring at
For
Joe as
6
he's literally
low
talking
payments
about-
of $99.99,
Staring at Joe as
you
he's
can
literally
have
talking
this
about killing
big
him.
ass treasure goblin.
So yeah.
They're happy to be on.
We just want to confirm
Respec
that,
costs?
the stuff we said last week, we're going to reduce
Okay.
respec cost by 40%.
Okay.
Players are going to get an extra stash tab, and Elixir stat count is going to go up to 99.
Yeah, and the stash tab is
Whoa.
just purchasable by
That's
gold.
right. So
So
Yeah.
that's just to make sure that people don't.
I don't know if they're going to
Yeah.
address the
Tab 1's 100K, Tab 2
The
is 200K,
blessings,
Tab 3's 300K,
upping
Tab 4 is going to be 400K.
the
So you can buy
reroll
that
costs?
for your seasonal stash and for your eternal stash.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, 40% is big.
And then one other thing
we
that,
need that
we did want to talk
desperately.
about, because this was a question that came up last week in regards to like the leaving dungeon options and like teleporting out of dungeons and so forth.
And reset dungeon doesn't
and I
always
know you
work.
wanted to talk more
I
about
play
that
solo
here,
and it's like reset
today.
dungeon. It's like one or
I
more
don't
party
know. I
members
think
are
I
still in the
explained it
dungeon. You
pretty
cannot
well
reset
last
it.
So clear.
There's-
Stupid.
There's a loop there. I don't know why anyone's confused. This is very clear. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to change it back to 3 seconds.
Yes.
Basically, the reason that we increased this is we have, in Diablo IV, we have a mechanic where when you're casting some kind of spell or power and you get hit by some damage, you don't get interrupted immediately. You have to take about 5% of your health and damage before it gets interrupted. And this makes things like town portaling back to town, leave dungeon, etc., feel a lot better.
Saving a prisoner.
Saving a prisoner, absolutely, yeah.
Every time.
So if you're taking like really incidental damage, it's not going to get interrupted. But we were worried about a case where you're in the middle of a high intensity combat fight or in the middle of a boss fight, and we felt like it was a little bit too easy to get out of that in terms, and that's actually what it's referring to with the loop, which again, I felt like.
I mean, that does make
I felt
sense.
like I nailed it, but I
Like
guess
you could just
I guess, you
kite
know,
the boss to one side of the room, go over and teleport out
so,
and get out of there.
You know,
and
there are
there's
other ways that we could have solved that, right? We could have said like, oh, well, you get pushed back on your cast, or like, oh, well, it's only increased to 5 seconds if you're in a boss fight, or something like that.
Yeah,
But
like that would make
ultimately,
more sense.
You know, what players really accurately pointed out is, look, this slows down the core loop of the game in a way that's not fun.
Yeah.
So we're just changing it back to 3 seconds.
Yeah, so it was at 3 seconds, went to 5 seconds, going back to 3 seconds because, you know, obviously good player feedback. And,
Now take the cooldown
from
reductions
everyone,
back.
So
I've got
wanted
one
to-
more bonus thing to talk about too.
Ooh,
so,
bonus.
So we've been getting a lot of feedback, obviously, on some of the Nightmare Dungeon affixes themselves. And we know that some of these are sort of ones you're going to want to basically throw in the trash right away. So you're going to want to salvage these and get Citadel Dust immediately upon when some of these things kind of pop up. So a couple of the ones that we're actually going to be, for now, we're going to be removing a few of these as we think about reworking them or deciding what we want to do with them. But we're going to be taking these out in 1.1.1. They're not going to appear anymore. That is, so the first is Resource Drain. It's not going to be showing up in Nightmare
Thank God.
Souls anymore. Cold Enchanted is not going to be showing up in
Okay,
Nightmare
'cause
Souls
that's
anymore, for a bit. And then Backstabber is being removed as well as part of 1.1.1.
All right.
Now, this is not by any means an exhaustive list of the things we'd want to like adjust on the affix side. You know, there's lots more that we want to do to kind of improve this experience. This is just sort of like while we're in here beginning to look at these things, we know that these are problematic. We have adjustments we want to make.
Yeah, nobody
anyway.
plays
We
resource
wanna go ahead
burn.
and pull
Right in
these
the
out
trash
and
every
make these
time.
things better today.
I mean, drifting shade, that's annoying. The lightning
Cool.
dome is
Also here, I know
annoying.
that a lot of players have been giving feedback about specific.
The ones where they
nightmare
explode,
dungeon
like every
episodes
time you
and
kill them,
everything,
that's
so
annoying
it's
as
great that
fuck.
We've been able to jump on a few of the ones that we know
They're
are
just not
problematic.
fun.
I've seen so many.
So we got a little
calendars
over
in
2
the
weeks.
Tuesday after.
Oh, sorry, it is.
Oh,
No, I
I
lied.
think it's not
It is
the phone.
August 8th.
Yeah.
See, this is.
Wait,
this
what?
is dates. Just
Everything's
flying
a
through
blur
my
right
head.
now.
August 8th.
Sorry, August 2nd is when the patch notes will be coming out
Yeah.
in full, and then August 8th
Okay,
is when the
alright.
patch will actually hit. Sorry, I apologize. I've had a lot of dates in my head over the past couple of weeks.
Sorry, we
so,
buffed the date.
Yeah, buff the
Buff
date
the date.
to exactly how
So we
were
can get
talking about
disappointed
that we wanna better
beforehand.
Communicate these notes here, similar to how we're doing this here on this.
They're not gonna
campfire
change
chat.
them.
And then of course August.
Like
8th is
showing
when the
us
patch will end up
beforehand is
going
not gonna
live
do
for all
anything.
players so that they
If
can
we
actually
like
experience it
uproar and
and
like
jump
throw a
through
fit
all the
and get out
changes
our
that, we were
flaming
kind of
pitchforks, they're
detailing
not gonna
here and they'll
change
be
it.
seeing in the final patch notes on
Like it is what it
Wednesday
is. Here you go.
As part of that. And now we're going through and we're updating density inside the Nightmare Dungeons and in
Which is
Helltide
gonna
areas
increase
as well.
experience.
Which will
Yeah,
increase
all
the
of these-
XP, right? I
all
said
this
that.
to say, we are committed to increasing the speed at which the players be progressing through these later world tiers. We're not happy with the speed at which players are getting through some of this content and the kinds of behavior incentivizing as a result of that, right? We want to make sure that players feel that they can play the way that they want and they can progress at a decent pace. But now that we've made a number of these changes, we do want to see what the impact's going to be on the overall XP gain rate across the board for players and just seeing how different kinds of players are progressing. So that when we go through and we make changes, which we will be making soon, I think probably likely for season 2, when we go through and we make these changes, that's going to be informed by what we see players going through and what their experience is like now.
Yeah,
So it's really just a question of like how much are we going to make adjustments, like what's going to feel right.
So they're
And that's gonna be based
increasing
on, like, what we see
mob
from players.
density to see how much more XP we get.
Two people actually
And then they're
asking
gonna
pretty similar
change it
questions, but one
end
was
of
specifically
October.
calling out Adam Jackson is about crowd control. Obviously,
Yeah.
it is
sucks.
a huge and popular topic amongst the community. What are our thoughts about crowd control? What are we planning on doing about that here in the future?
I bet we all have thoughts on that actually.
We do, yeah.
Yes.
Let me
You
just
can
say
jump on that,
first
yeah.
that we think that as you get into situations where there are lots of monsters on screen and high-end areas where the amount of damage that you're seeing going in and out is really high, so you're having to react really quickly. Situations where you're being hard CC'd, or like stun or freeze or something like that, can be much more impactful than they are when the intensity and the pace of combat is lower. And so we want to make changes to CC to make that experience more fun. We want to do that. It's not in 1.1.1, but those are changes that we're looking at right now.
2 years later.
There's larger
They'll fix crowd
CC
control.
stuff that we're discussing internally that we want to.
I mean, with the mob density, CCs are just gonna be
We're working on-
worse.
We're working on stuff like that
You know?
for that right now.
Yeah, the inverse of that is actually also really dangerous, which
I
is
was-
that you're wandering through the game. You don't always know the kinds of creatures or affix. Obviously,
Yeah, I
you don't
mean,
know
like,
the affixes you can be dealing
there's
with.
not
You've
gonna be
got
anything wrong with
0%
that.
Poison resistance, and you get
'Cause there's
based on
poison, there's
one
cold,
tick,
there's
from a
lightning,
level 60 poison
fire,
resistance
like-
building.
Sure.
Right, it's like
It's a
there's
balance.
there's a balance.
Pump
we have.
everything in the
The key
fire,
is,
you're
you know,
gonna
as
get
we move forward,
more
everything
damage
that
than
Adam
everything
said
else.
is 100% accurate.
That's
We wanna make
fine.
sure that the choices between like armor for mitigation, for damage resistance based on passives, legendary powers, you know, glyphs and paragon nodes, those things are impactful, and that resistance plays a really, really important role. The big difference here is that resistance is a thing that you are going to stack and earn separately, and that they are usually tied to affixes or inherent affixes on rings and jewelry. So it means that some players will be able to go and encounter situations where they are not going to have a predictable amount of resistance when they go into an encounter, which means that we just need to think about what that is going to feel like for that player and imagine a world where they are able to still complete the content, but it's much more effective to have the appropriate amount of resistance. We need to make that feel impactful. So there's going to be situations where we are going to ensure that if you are getting into a predictable fight against a creature that you know is dealing a certain kind of damage and you don't have resistance in mind when you go into that fight, you're going to be penalized for that. That's going to be a really, really difficult situation for you. You know, but we are, you know, trying to balance this against the general flow of Diablo IV as it stands today, as opposed to trying to like remake it into an entirely different experience.
Right. And to sort of get to I think the point of the question, the question there, which I think is, do you guys realize that resistances don't feel like they're hitting that goal right now?
That's right. Yeah.
We do realize.
Yes.
We're gonna,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they said that last time. Season 2.
Sounds good. There is a lot of questions about mounts and how, like, we've gotten a lot of feedback about mounts.
Yeah, if I get off my mount to
we've
climb up a
seen
cliff,
Carbot videos. Our
I gotta
friend
wait
Carbot
10 seconds.
Animation made an episode about mounts. Very funny if you haven't seen it.
You always get stuck on shit.
Check it out.
Sprint is broken when you get on your horse and leave town.
Discussions.
Where do we start?
Like, what are you guys planning on doing in relation to mounts?
Yeah, there are a few changes here. So we want to make mounts feel better, sort of broadly speaking, and a couple of those things are making sure that the boost feels really good, especially with controller, where it's underperforming, and the boost actually, the boost mechanic on the mounts, it actually stacks. There's a bug right now with that on controller where it's not stacking properly. We're going to fix that. There's a few other, there's a key part of this is that the mount gets stuck on things, and that's
All the time.
Barricade.
One of the things that
Yeah.
barricade,
No,
for
not just the
example.
barricade.
So we in theory, the idea that you're riding through an area and some bandits or some skeletons have set up a barricade for you, and you have to sort of like dismount and fight all those skeletons, like that sounds like a fun idea.
Cool.
It doesn't exactly play out that way.
No, it's annoying.
You're just sort of annoyed. And you're like, well, can I like kind of ride around the top of the barricade? And then it's a fight about whether the collision actually touches. Anyway, we're going to fix that. So there are some good changes to mounts coming.
Balance changes.
All right,
and
so
forth.
Wednesday,
I did
August 2nd,
And so
and then
Now you're
Tuesday
right.
the
Now,
8th.
like
I'm, in
clap
my,
every
now,
time I
now I'm
do
just
it.
stuck in
We'll
this,
get to
like,
see
my,
everything.
my own empty rooms.
Thanks, everybody.
I mean, nothing too crazy, right? At least they're buffing a lot of stuff. Well, boys, you know the drill. I'm honestly thinking about getting into PoE, Path of Exile. I know a lot of people are like starting to talk about it and jump ship. I've never played it. I know the girlfriend's played it. She loves it. I know it's like super complicated. I love that shit. I don't know. I think we'll get into it. You boys know the drill. Subscribe, come back, and I'll see you on the next one.